You know, the ingenuity shown by native people around the world never fails to amaze me, particularly those that live in really remote regions, like the Kalahari Bushmen. So today, what I thought I'd do is show you some really ingenious bushcraft. One of the things I want to show you is how to make a straw for collecting water. For that, I'm going to use a piece of dead elder. This is one of those less pleasant sights we come across in the outdoors all the time these days. Bits of wire left behind by agricultural use. But even that can have its uses. One of the most important tools for native people was the digging stick, with which they could lift roots from the ground and find water. And this piece of wood is ideal. It's dead, it's been crowded out by the forest, and yet it's still standing and strong. I've carved this end to a strong, durable point, ideal for digging, but I'm going to make it even stronger by hardening it in a fire. To fire harden the stick, I just heat it until it's on the verge of scorching, but not quite. And that'll make the end good and hard and resilient when we're digging in the ground. The nice thing about the elder we gathered earlier is that in the middle, it's soft and pithy. And with the piece of wire that I gathered, which I've straightened and heated, I can easily burn out the pith to make a drinking straw. Well, I've burned through the stick from both ends and then cut them off clean, and now I'm just using the wire to tidy up the inside of the stick. Should be just about ready. Yeah, it looks good, I'll show you. And while I'm here, I can use this fire for a little African snack. Now this is a technique that comes from the Kalahari. The bushmen, without a frying pan, would make an ostrich omelette under their fire in a depression like this. Now I've never tried this before, but I thought we'd give it a go. The idea is for the heat of the ground under the fire to cook the omelette from one side, while a little bit of heat from the embers cooks the other side. Let's see how the omelette's doing. Perfectly cooked. Boy, let's try this. Clever fellows, those Kalahari bushmen. Remember, we always put the fire out and clear it away afterwards. The most amazing technique I know of for finding water is the sip well, and that's where the digging stick is going to come in really handy. It's great for low-lying sandy areas where the soil is moist but not wet enough for water to run and collect in any holes you dig. I'm going to take some grass, just some dry grass, push that down in the bottom of the hole. Then the straw that we made earlier. Pack some more grass around the top of that and fill the hole back in. Now this is the clever bit. We suck. This is going to take a few minutes. We're creating a vacuum at the bottom of the hole that's going to draw moisture through the grains of sand and into the hole and eventually up the tube. We're getting water. And although the water may look horribly dark and sandy, it tastes good. And what we do is filter out the sediment before we consumed it. But I tell you what, it must have been an awfully thirsty person who thought this one up. Drinks can like this can be used for fishing, believe it or not. This technique's used all around the world by people who can't afford fishing tackle. The thing about this technique is it's as cheap as fishing can come. For a lure, I'm just going to use a simple little rubber jig like that. It's got a weighted hook which makes it ideal for casting. But if you didn't have one of these, you could use a spoon. This way of fishing is really good fun.
It's kind of bizarre, but around these parts, there's always someone popping up out of the ground. Something to do with the labyrinth of potholes, caves and lead mines that make up the Derbyshire Peak District. This cave, the Peak Cavern, has been carved out by water and is known locally by the delightful name of the Devil's Arse. It's an amazing looking landscape here. We've got the limestone almost erupting out of the ground.
Yeah, well, when you look at the gorge directly behind me here, I mean, you've got to think of this at one time, all being underneath the ground. That was actually a cave until the last ice age came along, scoured the whole surface off it, and the water dropped down to lower levels.
There's one of the old lead mine shafts just over here, and the place is obviously riddled with them.
Oh yeah, there's a shaft there, behind the back of the hill there, there's going to be, hundreds probably of mine shafts all around there. A lot of them are still open, but a lot of them aren't. I mean, the whole area, the ground we're stood on here, there's mines underneath your very feet.
What part did Peak Cavern play in all this?
Right, well, Peak Cavern, well, if you hadn't got ropes, you couldn't get into the mine. So as soon as vertical mining started, you would obviously need rope to get into the mines.
And that's where the rope makers hung out?
That's where the rope makers came into it, yeah.
How many people would have been making rope down here?
Well, it depends on really the century that they were actually living inside the entrance, because they'd actually live inside here as well. And there was 4 big families inside here, and I say big families, 12 people per unit, and there could have been 40, 50 people living inside here. I know there is 14 sites of dwellings inside the entrance.
Visitors to the cave in the 19th century really knew how to do it in style. Not for them wading through the muck and water. No, they used to get a lift from one of the locals, a kind of thrill ride for the aristocracy. And while they were up here, they used to scribble graffiti on the wall, just so they could leave their mark. OK, Richard, how's the back?
Oh, I'll be all right.
Do you want to spend all your time crawling about in the mud, hundreds of feet underground?
It's exploration, really. It's like landing on the moon, except you haven't got the expense of a rocket in this case.
I'd like to point out, however, that on the moon there is a little more space. Caves are cold, a constant 7 degrees and full of water, so a wetsuit is essential, as well as a helmet and a lamp, and most importantly, someone who knows what they're doing. Well, we're going to be all right for a fry-up later, aren't we?
A fry-up later, yeah. I don't think they're the kind of mushrooms you really want to eat. People seem to think that there's no life inside a cave. There's all sorts of things. They've just recently found in other caves around this area a very rare kind of beetle that actually lives underneath all the silt inside here. It's probably been here since the second glacial melt, so that's 27,000 years ago. It's been living underground in the cave systems and totally evolved in its own species.
By the way, why is it called the Devil's Arse?
Well, when it actually floods, there's lots of trapped air in the system, so what kind of sound does trapped air make?